I earn $40,000 a month, but I feel poor. So when I met her wealthy in-laws, I decided to pretend I was broke. Their stares, their insults, they had no idea they were trying to destroy a woman with so much influence. The restaurant gleamed like a palace of glass and gold, all soft jazz and clinking crystal, but all Daniel Reeves and could feel was the tremor in Amaya's Cora hand as she held his. Her family, the Hartfords, sat at a long marble table, their smiles polished and practiced, the kind that hid sharp edges underneath. Daniel adjusted the cuff of his worn gray jacket. The fabric had seen better days, but he'd chosen it on purpose. Tonight wasn't about looking rich, it was about seeing clearly. He could have arrived in his black Mercedes or one of his tailored suits. But the moment Maya had said, "They're a bit judgmental," he knew exactly what kind of game he was walking into. So he came as no one important. To the world, Daniel Reeves was a highly sought-after executive consultant, the man who turned collapsing companies into billion-dollar recoveries. He made $40,000 a month, sometimes more. But lately, success had started tasting like dust. He'd been surrounded by people who only saw his money, never his mind or heart. Then came Maya, the quiet artist who sold hand-painted scarves online, the woman who laughed at his corny jokes and never once asked what he earned. With her, he felt human again. But tonight was their first dinner with her parents, a test he hadn't planned to cheat on. The moment they sat down, Victoria Hartford gave him that disarming smile, the kind socialites wear when they're already judging you. "So, Daniel," she began, setting down her wine glass, "Maya tells us you work in consulting? What kind of consulting can you do on such a modest salary?" Her words dripped with charm, but her eyes glinted like ice. Maya's shoulders tensed beside him. Daniel smiled softly, pretending not to notice the insult. "Enough to get by, ma'am." Charles Hartford. Maya's father chuckled, a low, humorless sound. "Well, you certainly dress the part." The laughter around the table came too easily. Elena, Maya's younger sister, leaned forward. "Maybe he's just being frugal. You know, saving up for something small. Like a car that starts." Maya's face flushed crimson. "Elena, that's not—" Daniel stopped her gently with a look. His voice stayed calm, almost disarmingly so. "Frugality's underrated," he said, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. "It helps you see people for who they really are." The laughter stuttered, uncertain whether they'd just been insulted. Victoria's smile twitched, but she masked it with a sip of wine. Dinner dragged on in uncomfortable waves. They discussed stocks, ski resorts, and private schools as if humanity outside their social circle didn't exist. Each comment felt like a test, subtle prods to expose his background, his worth. When dessert arrived, Maya excused herself to the restroom, leaving Daniel alone with the predators in pearls. Victoria leaned in across the table, her voice soft but firm. "You seem like a nice man, Daniel, polite, grounded, but my daughter deserves stability. Not a struggle." Daniel met her gaze without blinking. "I couldn't agree more." Her lips curved upward, mistaking compliance for surrender. "So you'll step aside, then?" He smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. I'll just let you keep believing what you want. It's enlightening." Her eyes narrowed, unsure how to respond. Charles cleared his throat, muttering something about ambition and reality. When Maya returned, she immediately sensed the tension. "What happened?" Daniel only squeezed her hand. "Nothing important." They've made their impression. Outside, the night air was cool and quiet, a relief after the suffocating chatter inside. They walked toward his old sedan, its paint chipped, headlights dull. Maya sighed. "I'm so sorry about them." "They can be cruel." He smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "Don't apologize. Sometimes people need to see what's real before they understand what's valuable." As they reached the car, Charles called out from the restaurant steps, voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You'll understand someday." "Daniel, money isn't everything, but it certainly helps." Daniel turned back, his expression unreadable. "You're right. he said evenly. It helps, if you actually have it. The words hung in the air, humble, yet edged with something they couldn't quite place. Then he opened the car door for Maya, still wearing that calm, polite smile. But inside, something else stirred. Not anger, but resolve. They'd just judged a man without realizing who they were dealing with. And soon, they'd find out. 2 weeks later, the Yes Hartford Country Club glowed like a cathedral of wealth. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above a sea of designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. The air buzzed with laughter, champagne, and carefully disguised competition. It was the night of the Hartford Annual Charity Gala, the most exclusive event of the year where people didn't just donate money, they performed generosity. And the Hartfords were the stars of the show. Maya had begged Daniel to come. "Please," she whispered that morning. "They were cruel, I know. But maybe if they see who you really are, they'll finally respect you." Daniel smiled, buttoning that same plain jacket he'd worn to dinner. "No, Maya, let's keep it the same. Sometimes masks reveal more than faces." She didn't understand then, but she would soon. When they entered the ballroom, the crowd's polished smiles turned into whispers. Daniel's simple clothes stood out like a stain in a sea of silk. Elena, standing by the champagne fountain, smirked to her friend. "Oh my God, he actually came like that again." Her mother, Victoria, turned, wearing a grin so thin it could cut glass. "At least he's consistent." Maya's fingers tightened around Daniel's hand. He only gave her a reassuring squeeze. "Don't look at them," he murmured. "They're just seeing what they want to see." Dinner was served. The Hartfords paraded through introductions, board members, investors, old money acquaintances. Daniel said little, content to watch the way people's eyes flicked from his cheap watch to his confident smile, confused by the contrast. Then the host, an overly cheerful man with a microphone, stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight to support the Hartford Children's Medical Center. We've raised over $3 million already, and we have a very special announcement." The lights dimmed slightly, and a hush swept the room. "Tonight," the host continued, "we're proud to welcome a surprise donor, someone who has quietly transformed education and health care across New England. Please welcome our newest benefactor, Mr. Daniel Reeves Orferi, the Reeves Foundation." The room froze. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maya turned to Daniel, eyes wide, breath caught. "Daniel, what?" He rose slowly, adjusting his jacket as the giant screen behind the stage flashed his foundation's name, bold, unmistakable. The host grinned. "Mr. Reeves has pledged $5 million to fully fund the hospital's new research wing." Every head swiveled toward him. Victoria's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Charles Hartford's face turned the color of paper. Daniel walked to the stage with calm precision. The room watched in stunned silence as he took the microphone. "Sometimes," he began, voice steady and low, "we make the mistake of measuring people by what they own instead of who they are." He paused, scanning the crowd. Faces he recognized from the dinner. The ones who'd laughed. I've been guilty of that too. But recently I met a family that reminded me how powerful perception can be. Some people only see value when it's wrapped in money. The crowd shifted uneasily. His gaze fell directly on the Hartford table. "A few weeks ago I pretended to be broke, just to see who would still treat me with respect. It turns out, that test reveals far more than any bank statement ever could." The silence was deafening. Even the clinking of glasses had stopped. Then he turned to Maya, his voice softening. "But one person passed that test beautifully. She didn't need proof, titles, or numbers. She just saw me, and that's worth more than any fortune." The applause started slowly, then grew into thunder. Reporters surged forward, flashes blinding the stage. The same guests who once ignored him now fought to shake his hand. At their table, Victoria sat frozen, mouth slightly open, mascara trembling at the corners of her eyes. Charles tried to stand but couldn't find the words. Elena looked like she wanted to vanish into the floor. When Daniel stepped off the stage, Maya met him halfway, tears shining in her eyes. You planned this?" He smiled gently. "No, I just gave the truth a little stage." Later that night, when the crowd had thinned and the music softened, Victoria approached him hesitantly. "Daniel, we had no idea." He stopped her with a polite nod. "You didn't care to," he said quietly. "And that's the difference between ignorance and arrogance." Then he took Maya's hand and walked toward the exit. The cameras, the glitter, the whispers, they all faded behind them. Outside, under the soft glow of the club's chandeliers, he turned to her. "I didn't want revenge," he said. "I just wanted truth." She smiled through her tears. "And you got it." They walked into the night, leaving behind the people who'd once mocked him, now left choking on their own pride. Never underestimate the quiet man who has nothing to prove, because the ones who speak softly often hold the loudest power.